You're just for now. I'll find a real partner later. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Emily didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. Just sat there painting her nails that perfect shade of I don't give a damn red while delivering the end blow to our 7-year marriage. I smiled. Actually smiled. Thanks for the honesty. She finally looked up, probably expecting tears or begging. Instead, she got my warehouse supervisor grin, the one I use when someone tries to shortchange a delivery. Calm, professional, temporary. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, but her attention was already drifting back to her screen. Nothing, sweetheart. Just appreciate the clarity. The thing about being called temporary is that it gives you perspective. Like when you're renting a hotel room, you don't exactly invest in new curtains, do you? 7 years of marriage, and apparently I'd been paying for a long-term lease on something she considered a vacation rental. I should have seen it coming. The way she'd roll her eyes when I talked about work, how she'd suddenly developed opinions about my clothes, my hobbies, my existence. Blake is so ordinary. I'd overheard her tell her sister Kelly last month. He fixes trucks and watches sports. I mean, what kind of future is that? The kind that paid for her yoga classes and weekend spa trips, apparently. But who's keeping track? The affair revelation came 2 weeks later in the parking lot of Pinnacle Fitness. I'd stopped by to surprise her with lunch, Thai food from that place she liked. Instead, I got a front row seat to Derek Landon's hands all over my wife's yoga pants. Derek Landon, personal trainer, drives a leased BMW, lives in a studio apartment but talks about his investment portfolio. The kind of guy who wears tank tops to grocery stores and calls everyone bro, my wife's upgrade. I sat in my truck watching them grope each other like teenagers, and all I could think was, so this is what a real partner looks like. Guy couldn't even afford to take her somewhere with actual privacy. My phone buzzed. Group text from Emily to her friends. Girls' night tonight. Blake's working late again, LOL. Derek says hi. The laughing emoji. That's what got me. Not the lie, not the cheating, the casual cruelty of that little yellow face. I drove home and did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a beer at 2 p.m. and sat in my garage looking at my tools. Funny how they suddenly felt more like weapons than equipment. My phone rang. Eddie Brennan, my oldest friend. You sound different, he said, without preamble. Different how? Like you're planning something. Smart man, Eddie. We'd known each other since high school, back when I thought marriage meant partnership and loyalty meant something. Emily thinks I'm temporary, I told him. Long pause. Yeah? What are you going to do about it? I looked at my wedding ring. 7 years of gold, now feeling more like a shackle than a promise. Prove her right. Monday morning, I started acting temporary. Emily reached for her usual coffee, the expensive stuff she special ordered online, and found generic store brand instead. Blake, what happened to my coffee? Figured since I'm just temporary, I shouldn't be making permanent purchases. I smiled over my newspaper. Temporary budgets, temporary coffee. Makes sense, right? She stared at me like I'd spoken Mandarin. The beauty of being underestimated is that people don't see the trap until they're already in it. Emily had spent years treating me like furniture, reliable, boring, always there when needed. She'd forgotten that furniture can be moved. I canceled her gym membership. Personal trainer fees seemed excessive for someone who's just passing through. Blocked her access to our joint streaming accounts. Why invest in entertainment for temporary arrangements? Changed the Wi-Fi password. Sorry, honey. Utilities are for permanent residents. Each move was surgical, reasonable, fair even. After all, she'd made the rules clear. I was just playing by them. Derek called Tuesday night. I watched Emily's face as she whispered sweet nothings to her real partner. When she hung up, she was practically glowing. He's taking me to Meridian's this weekend, she announced. Meridian's, The steakhouse where our anniversary dinner cost more than Derek's monthly car payment. That's nice. He paying? Her glow dimmed slightly. Of course he's paying. I nodded thoughtfully. Good thing. Since I'm just temporary, didn't seem right to keep funding permanent relationship expenses. Thursday night, Eddie called with intel. He'd done some digging on Derek through mutual gym connections. Your boy's got problems, Eddie said. Owes money to some serious people. That BMW? 3 months behind on payments. And get this, he's been telling people you're some kind of pushover who doesn't know about the affair. Is that right? Called you the doormat at the gym yesterday. Said Emily's got you so whipped you'd probably thank him for taking her off your hands. The doormat. I added that to my growing list of scores to settle. Friday evening, Emily emerged from the bedroom looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Designer dress, professional makeup, the works. Don't wait up, she said, not even glancing in my direction. Wouldn't dream of it. You two have fun at Meridian's. She paused at the door. How did you know we were going to Meridian's? Lucky guess. After she left, I made a phone call to Jake Morrison, the manager at Meridian's. We'd gone to high school together, and I'd done some electrical work on his house last year. Jake? It's Blake Patterson. Listen, I need a favor. An hour later, I was sitting at the bar in Meridian's, nursing a whiskey, and watching my wife's real partner discover that his credit card had been declined. Twice. The look on Emily's face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured. Watching Derek fumble through his wallet, sweat beading on his spray-tanned forehead, was better than cable. I finished my drink and walked over to their table. Problem here? I asked conversationally. Derek's face went red. Blake, hey man. Emily, sweetheart. I kissed my wife's cheek. Fancy meeting you here. Having payment issues? The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. I can cover it, Derek said finally, his voice cracking like a teenager's. No need. I pulled out my wallet and dropped enough cash to cover their meal plus tip. Consider it my contribution to temporary arrangements. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, Derek. Next time you call someone a doormat, make sure they're not friends with half the town. His face went pale. Emily looked confused, but I could see the gears turning. Enjoy your dinner, I said, and walked away. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Your wife's boyfriend tried to pay with 3 different cards. All declined. Thought you'd want to know. I texted back. Perfect. Thanks, brother. Outside in the parking lot, I leaned against my truck and waited. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, they came storming out, Emily hissing angry words at Derek while he gestured wildly at his phone. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Saturday morning brought thunderstorms and Emily's rage in equal measure. What the hell was that last night? She screamed the moment I walked into the kitchen. I poured myself coffee with deliberate calm. What was what? Don't play dumb, Blake. You humiliated us. I bought you dinner. You're welcome. She slammed her palm on the counter. Derek couldn't pay because his accounts were frozen. I raised an eyebrow. Frozen? That's unfortunate. Identity theft is terrible these days. You did something. Me? I'm just temporary help, remember? What could I possibly do to someone as successful as Derek? Her eyes narrowed. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew I was behind it somehow. We're having people over tonight, she announced. A dinner party. Derek will be here. How nice. I'll be sure to stay out of the way. Actually, you'll be here. I want everyone to meet my husband. The way she said husband made it sound like a disease. That afternoon, I watched from my garage as Emily transformed our house into a stage. Her usual crew arrived, Kelly, Vanessa, Tiffany, the Greek chorus of suburban malice. Derek showed up in a rental car, still maintaining his alpha male swagger despite last night's credit card catastrophe. Eddie arrived as backup, bringing his wife Monica. At least I'd have allies in enemy territory. The dinner party was exactly what I expected, a public execution disguised as social gathering. Emily seated me at the far end of the table like a poor relation, while Derek held court beside her, regaling everyone with stories of his fitness expertise and business ventures. "Blake here works with trucks," Emily announced during the appetizer course, her tone suggesting I cleaned septic tanks for a living. "Blue-collar work is so honest," Vanessa cooed with fake sympathy. "Not everyone can have entrepreneurial vision." Derek nodded sagely. "Some people are just built for following orders, you know?" "Nothing wrong with that." I smiled and took a bite of the shrimp cocktail I'd paid for. Following orders has its advantages. You learn to be very observant. Emily shot me a warning look. During the main course, Derek began holding forth about his investment strategies and future plans. Big talk from someone whose accounts had been frozen by unpaid debts, but I let him perform. "The key is thinking long-term," he said, gesturing with his wine glass. "You can't just settle for temporary solutions. You need to invest in permanent success." Temporary versus permanent, I mused. Interesting philosophy. The table went quiet. Emily's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Take relationships, for example," I continued conversationally. "Some people think they can just use others as stepping stones while they look for something better. Treating people as temporary, what's the word? Placeholders." Derek's jaw tightened. "That's a pretty cynical view, don't you think?" "Is it cynical? Or just realistic?" I pulled out my phone. "I mean, when someone tells you exactly how they see you, shouldn't you believe them?" I pressed play on a recording I'd made of Emily's brutal honesty session 2 weeks ago. Her voice filled the dining room with crystal clarity. "You're just for now. I'll find a real partner later." The silence was deafening. Emily's face went white, then red, then white again. "Blake," she whispered. "But wait, there's more." I swiped to the next recording, her group text conversation I'd recovered from our shared cloud account. Here's what she told her friends about our marriage. Kelly's voice echoed from my phone. "So when are you leaving him?" Emily's laugh. "Soon as Derek gets his finances together." "Blake's like training wheels, useful until you learn to ride properly." Vanessa. "God, he's so boring, though. How do you stand it?" Emily. "Easy. I just pretend he's furniture." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Monica gasped. Eddie's wife had tears in her eyes. Derek stood up abruptly. "This is private stuff, man. You had no right." "No right?" I stood too, and suddenly the dining room felt very small. "I had no right to record conversations in my own house? About my own marriage?" "You're being a psycho," Derek snarled. "Psycho? For finding out my wife thinks I'm temporary furniture?" I laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You know what's psycho, Derek? Maxing out credit cards to impress someone else's wife. Having your BMW repossessed while pretending to be a successful entrepreneur. Owing $12,000 to Tony Castellano's crew and thinking no one would find out." Derek's face went ash gray. "How do you—" "I'm very observant. Comes with being temporary." He lunged at me across the table, scattering plates and wine glasses. I'd been expecting it. Guys like Derek always chose violence when their image cracked. He was bigger than me, but I'd been loading trucks and fixing engines for 15 years. He spent his time lifting weights in controlled environments. I dealt with real-world physics. When his first swing came, I ducked and let his momentum carry him into the china cabinet. Expensive dishes exploded across the hardwood floor, Emily's wedding china, ironically enough. Derek recovered and came at me again, this time landing a solid hit to my ribs. Pain flared, but I'd had worse from slipped wrenches and falling equipment. I grabbed a dining room chair and used it like a shield, backing toward the kitchen. Derek followed, throwing wild punches and screaming about respect and territory. In the kitchen, I had more options. When he charged again, I opened the refrigerator door at the perfect moment. Derek ran face first into stainless steel at full speed. He went down hard, blood streaming from his nose onto Emily's pristine tile floor. "Derek!" Emily screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. I stood over them both, breathing hard but victorious. The dinner party guests huddled in the doorway like frightened sheep. "Here's the thing about being temporary," I said to the room. "We're easy to underestimate, easy to dismiss, easy to replace." I looked down at Emily cradling her bleeding boyfriend. "But we're also easy to lose." Derek groaned and tried to sit up. Blood was still flowing from his clearly broken nose. "You're crazy," he mumbled through swelling lips. "No, I'm thorough." I pulled out my phone again. "For instance, I called Tony Castellano this afternoon, told him where to find you. He seemed very interested in continuing your conversation about that $12,000. Derek's eyes went wide with genuine terror. Tony Castellano wasn't the kind of man who accepted payment plans. "You wouldn't," Derek whispered. "I already did." "They should be here any minute, actually." As if summoned by my words, the doorbell rang. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, more insistent. Derek scrambled to his feet, panic overriding pain. "Back door," he gasped to Emily. "We need to go now." But I was already moving. Years of warehouse logistics had taught me to think 3 steps ahead. While Derek stumbled toward the rear exit, I calmly walked to the front door. "Blake, don't you dare," Emily started. I opened the door to reveal 2 men in expensive suits. Not Tony Castellano's crew, something better. "Mr. Patterson? I'm Detective Ray Morrison, Warsaw PD. We received a call about a domestic disturbance. Jake Morrison's older brother. I'd forgotten he was on the force." "Just a dinner party that got out of hand, Detective. My wife's friend had an accident with our china cabinet." Ray looked past me at the destruction in the dining room, then at Derek's bloody face. "That so? Mind if we take a look?" Derek was trapped between police in the front and his paranoia about Tony's men in the back. He stood in my kitchen like a deer in headlights, blood still dripping from his nose. "Actually, Detective," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I think Derek was just leaving." "Weren't you, Derek?" Derek nodded frantically and headed for the back door. Ray let him go. Smart man knew this wasn't about assault charges. After the police left and the dinner guests scattered like startled birds, it was just Emily and me standing in the wreckage of our dining room. She looked around at the broken china, the overturned furniture, the bloodstains on her perfect floor. "This is insane, Blake." "All of this. Over what? A few harsh words? A few harsh words?" I started collecting the larger pieces of our shattered wedding china. 7 years, Emily. 7 years I've been furniture in my own house. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant every word. I stood up, holding a piece of our broken wedding plate. "You know what the funny thing is? I was actually a pretty good husband. Faithful, hard-working, supportive, but that wasn't enough, was it? I wasn't exciting enough, not successful enough, not enough." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. For once, Emily had nothing to say. "So I decided to become what you wanted. Temporary." My phone buzzed with a text from Eddie. Derek's car got towed. Something about unpaid loans. Tony's guys were waiting at his apartment when he got home. He's spending the night at the Motel 6 on Route 9. I showed Emily the message. "Looks like your real partner is having some temporary difficulties." Her face crumpled. "Blake, I made a mistake. I was angry and stupid and honest. Don't take that back now." The next morning, I loaded my truck with everything that mattered to me. Tools, clothes, photo albums from before Emily decided I wasn't worth keeping. She watched from the doorway, still in her robe, looking smaller somehow. "Where will you go?" "Eddie's got a spare room. Temporary arrangement until I find something permanent. Blake, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over. With what? You made it clear I'm not real partner material. I'm just accepting your evaluation." I threw the last box in the truck bed and turned to face her. The house is paid off. My name's on the deed, so you can't sell without my signature. The bank accounts are frozen pending divorce proceedings. Your credit cards are canceled. You were just an authorized user, not an actual account holder. Derek's broke and running from loan sharks. Your girlfriends just saw you publicly humiliated. She stared at me like I was a stranger. But here's the beautiful part, Emily. This is exactly what you wanted. You're finally free to find that real partner you've been looking for. No more temporary husband holding you back. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see her standing there in our doorway, surrounded by the life we'd built together, the life she'd dismissed as temporary. My phone rang as I pulled out of the driveway. Eddie's number. "How'd it go?" he asked. I looked in my rearview mirror at Emily, still standing frozen in the doorway. In a few hours, she'd realized just how much of her comfortable life had been built on her temporary husband's permanent commitment. "Funny thing about being temporary," I told Eddie as I drove away. "You'll never forget the one who left first." The sun was coming up over Warsaw, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was driving towards something instead of away from it. Behind me, Emily stood in the ruins of the life she'd taken for granted, finally understanding what temporary really meant. I didn't look back again.